Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for today, September 4th. And also, first and foremost, I acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Coast Salish people. And an approval of the agenda with C3 removed. It was prohibited under Section 380 of the Local Government Act. And also you received an additional information for R9 in front of you. And with that, I'd like approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And now for the adoption of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of we're not even there yet, August 21st, 2019. Moved, second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is none.
Okay, we go into the public input period. The information is on the screen. If there's anybody that wishes to provide some information, come to the podium, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you to fellow directors and staff, I'm addressing you today as a resident and alternate director of Area E, but more importantly, a person directly and adversely affected by the VIMC racetrack on Highway 18. The CVRD has been named as a referee in the matter of a rezoning application currently before North Cowichan. This will allow the circuit to log and pave another 100 acres of forest and fish-bearing streams close to our home in Satlan. Menzies and Biggs Creek are also affected by this application. As a referee, your opinion is important, it is valued, and I please implore you to listen carefully to the people that you will be hearing from today on this matter. As a result of regular and excessive noise levels, our neighbors, both North Cowichan residents and Area E residents, have engaged during the 4 years of intrusive noise from the track. We engaged in meetings with North Cowichan. We formed an association, we hired sound consultants, we embarked in litigation in a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of what our community had once been. The anecdotal noise complaints, I'm sure, are familiar to you all. We are now faced with the prospect of the track tripling in size, a prospect which is even more anxiety-invoking for our community. There are several reasons why I believe that you, as the elected representatives of many affected CVRD ratepayers, should speak on our behalf in the face of this rezoning application. If you read the track's application, you will see it is riddled with loopholes that will ensure our neighborhood's suffering will only continue. Their application clearly has no concrete plans for any noise mitigation. There are vague proposals of walls and berms, but there is absolutely no detail as to how effective they will be and how they will be built. Their application also allows for go-kart racing. For those as a permitted use, they would be exempt from any noise limits that would currently be put into place. The track will often refer to economic benefits as a result of their business practice, but they do so with virtually no data. They have commissioned an economic impact study, but they're not releasing it. Why? I will only speculate.
You have 34 seconds.
Okay.
Just to let you
Another
know.
compelling reason why the CVRD should be concerned is the fact that Area E residents who have appealed their tax assessments based on intrusive track noise have seen a significant reduction in our home's values. This, as a result, translates to lost revenue for the CVRD, and that has to be reconciled somewhere. So how? Possibly at the expense of other areas. The CVRD has embraced the Cowichan Vision 2050 initiative, and one recurring theme of note is the importance of shared leadership and shared responsibility. One area's problem is everyone's problem. Carbon and noise do not recognize jurisdictional boundaries.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on something on the agenda today?
Good afternoon. My name is Paul
Good afternoon.
Fletcher. Sorry?
Good afternoon.
Oh, there you go. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm here to speak also, as Jack does, about the importance of paying very close attention to this referral that you have underway. I'm the president of the Somnos Marsh Wildlife Society, and we were also named as a referral agency. And so I'm not bringing the official Somnos response here. I'm speaking more as a person, because we're still developing that information. But I wanted to point out that North Cowichan is, despite announcing that they're in a climate emergency, are considering a rezoning adjustment that will facilitate a number of development activities, all of which will have a further detrimental effect on our climate. The facility expansion that will slide out of this rezoning approval will promote air travel, shipping cars, driving without a destination, helicopter travel, and excessive use of fuels. I think the CVRD will consider their own emergency in the near future. It's important that you really look hard at that climate emergency situation, because economically, there isn't much point in developing facilities that go completely against your environmental and climate goals. That's very, very important. Another point I just wanted to bring up for you is that the Golder Environmental Review, which is part of that huge package, they say 25 hectares or 58% of the land base will be disturbed. So when you hear the stories of German cars racing through a forest, I seriously doubt that when the land has been so disturbed. The restoration, slated to be 15.5 acres, will take years to grow into that beautiful forest. Meanwhile, the soils have been disturbed again, which will impact the ecological balance and water management of the Mount Provost slope once again. I also wanted to point out to you that North Cowichan has been offered close to $600,000, and they've been offered that to build trails up Mount Provost and in the land above their property in partnership with the Cowichan Stewardship Trail Society. The Cowichan Stewardship Trail Society know nothing about this yet. They haven't been approached. $600,000 in trail building, I don't know what a kilometer costs, but it's very, very expensive. And to spend $600,000 on trails is a wonderful thing. But the other part of that promise for the $600,000 is a water reservoir. Part of the problem with a water reservoir is that you're looking at a need of 25,000 gallons, 25 gallons a minute being put into Bings Creek to help supplement Somnos Lake. That's what they're saying. We're going to help you clean Somnos Lake. Sorry?
You have 20 seconds left, just to
Okay.
let you know.
The point is, to build a reservoir, it's going to take 3.5 Olympic-sized pools on the slope of Mount Provost, which is far in excess to $600,000, and probably engineering-wise very difficult to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a while. Thank you for allowing me to speak for these 3 minutes. I don't understand this white man's watch was 3 minutes, but I guess if that's all I got, I'll try to squeeze it in. I stand before you as a Hwalmach, Cowichan band member. I have concerns when I see people that say we want to expand a racetrack, not giving consideration to the wildlife, the elk, the deer, not giving consideration when they say we're going to put bridges there, worried about the erosion into that water when someone says there's not much water there. There is in the wintertime. That's where Lake Cowichan gets a lot of their fish. It breeds. I worry about moving to a tree line, how much is going to be cleared. I ask the question when people say we're going to be building sawmills and planer mills and helicopter things. How much more do we have? How much more damage are we going to allow to happen to our planet? Trees are very scarce as it is now. You see that in the paper every day, people fighting over what's out there. I have concerns, and there's no one here to say something about the animals, and I'm here because I love them. I know what they do there because I did ground trooping for New Chelmsford. I hope you consider what I'm saying and realize that we need what's there. There are better solutions. When is enough enough? I'm really, really worried that my people don't know what's going on. And I'm being honest. We have some kind of consultant out there whose name I don't recognize, making comments I didn't agree with because no one spoke to me. No one spoke to the elders. No one has spoken to the people. So please, consider well what your decision will be. I apologize. No, I don't apologize to the racetrack people, because I think full well they understand. Time is of the essence for our planet. She's crying. The animals are saying, help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Good
Chair, can I ask a
afternoon.
question, please?
This is public input.
I know, but I've got a conflict on R7, and should I be listening to what's going on? I will declare a conflict on R7.
Oh, you will be declaring, I guess if you are declaring a conflict, you need to state your conflict and head out the door then. Not right now. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Mariah Walliner, and I'm an Area E resident, and I'm also the author of the noise report that hopefully you all received today. I know you haven't had a chance to really dive into it, and if you're not like me and enjoy statistics, you probably won't find it really exciting reading, but we have some really important information in there for you, and I'm here to just give you a very brief summary of what's in that report. One of the issues that you have to consider when you're determining whether noise is intrusive or not, and noise, of course, has been the huge issue with this development, is what the background noise is. So right now, if somebody in the audience starts coughing or their cell phone goes off, it's going to be very disruptive to all of you. But if we were transported down to City Square in Duncan during the 39 days of July, that same cell phone and coughing would not bother you at all. So the level of background noise is a really important determinant of how intrusive the noise is. We've had a lot of accusations from people who don't live in Area E about how noisy it must be because we're close to a highway and an industrial zone, et cetera. So the SNA set about to conduct a noise monitoring study to give some quantitative data about the noise levels in our community. And no surprise to any of you who live in a rural residential area, but it's really, really quiet where we live. And the racetrack is really, really loud relative to the background noise. So there's quantitative information in that report to back up what I'm saying here. The second thing you need to understand is that the noise limits that are proposed by VIMC in their rezoning application use a crazy kind of metric called percentile decibel levels. I won't bore you with what that is, but it is highly unusual. Most racetracks in the planet use a maximum decibel limit that's applicable 24/7. A percentile decibel limit, I'll translate for you what their noise limit means. It means that for 12 out of any 15-minute period, the noise levels have to be below 59 decibels, but for the other 3 minutes, they can be as loud as they want. And those 3 minutes don't have to be consecutive. And in my noise report, I'll show you an image of what noise looks like from the point of reception, and it's a bunch of peaks and valleys. So what that noise limit allows them to do is exceed those decibel levels about once every minute. So if you're a Satlam resident out in your garden on a beautiful day, and once every minute you hear a raucous sound of a race car that's 75 decibels, it's going to be very intrusive. So I'd like you to understand that there's a lot of lies, damned lies, and statistics going on in the information that you're being presented about noise, and it is deliberately, I think, in my opinion, as someone who understands these statistics, it is a deliberate misuse of mathematics to try and confuse the situation. So we would ask you to please very carefully consider the impact of this development on the residents of Satlam with regard to noise. Please read our report, and if you have any questions, Allison knows how to get a hold of me, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi, there's 2:35 left on our clock we have a 15-minute total for public input, so
All right,
welcome.
I'll talk pretty darn fast. My
Great.
name's Isabel Rimmer. I'm the president of the Satlam Neighborhood Association. I live in Area E. The board and the SNA have a common thing going on. We are both referrals for this racetrack proposal, and we are in the process of writing ours. We will be sending you kind of a précis of what we've been talking about today that doesn't represent the full referral, but I think would be helpful. Our concerns essentially are threefold. They are acoustic, they are environmental, and they are economic. But what we would like you guys to do is to consider the request for a referral through the lens of the Cowichan 2050 strategy. The Cowichan 2050 strategy is expected to address over the long term regional issues that include growth management, climate adaptation, ecosystem stewardship, watershed management, and First Nations relations. All these are wrapped up in this VIMC expansion proposal. We therefore request that any referral that you write, and we do very much hope that you agree to write a referral, that we request that you take a very cautious and well-informed approach to what is apparently being offered by the proponents. There are lots of strong arguments from an environmental and acoustical perspective. You've heard some of them. I'm sure you'll hear more. I would like to just point out that specifically regarding our third leg of the stool, the economic issue, there is not one shred of data to support what they've told us. Further, they quote an economic impact study that was done by a reputable company. They have not submitted that report to the municipality. We have requested that report. They have not given it to us. I believe that there's some smoke with that fire. I also sit on a board of an organization that has been listed as a supporter of VIMC. It's in their application. And I can tell you that we have never been supported by VIMC, and we have sent 3 separate letters requesting them to take our name off of their list. That has not happened. So in summary, we hope that you will please consider the municipality's request for a referral from CFRD through the lens of the Cowichan 2050. We think that it's time to take big applications like this and look at them very carefully from a regional perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay. Do you want to approach the microphone? There's 8 seconds.
Madam Chair, this seems to be a lot of interest in public input period today. I understand that you can extend it by 2/3 majority vote. Would the committee consider doing that today, please?
How many speakers are left to speak? There's 1 speaker that's left to speak.
And myself.
There's 2 speakers and 2/3. So we'll take it to the committee. All in favor? Opposed? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, members of the ESC. I am also a member of Satlam, and I live 4 kilometers from the VIMC, and I can hear it from inside my home. One thing that I want to draw to your attention, though, is much has been made of the CVRD noise bylaw, but Area E specifically does not allow the use of motorsports within their zoning. And it's actually defined within our zoning bylaw to prohibit motorsports and remote-controlled aircrafts. So when the North Cowichan is talking about that, I think they need to consider what uses zones are permitted with their neighboring jurisdictions. On April 19, 2017, the members of the SNA made a presentation to this committee, and it was noted by then Chair Morrison that an invitation be sent to North Cowichan to appear before the committee in regards to the VIMC application. I would wonder if that has happened. The other thing, the concern that I have moving forward with this proposal is it bypasses the official community plan. And the North Cowichan is undergoing a review soon, and that's an opportunity for the community to speak about their land use designations. We've also heard from a lot of people today, knowledgeable people within our community, about the environmental impacts. Does it make sense in this day and age to clear cut a forest to create 5 kilometers of roads going nowhere? Does it change the use of that land for anything else in the proposed bylaw? The question you're being asked today is, does this affect the interests of the CVRD? And I think it does, and most specifically Area E, but we all know that just like PM2 emissions do not respect jurisdictional boundaries, neither does greenhouse gases. I hope that you do send a referral letter and you consider very carefully the thoughts that were put forward here today, and those are included in your resolution if you choose to send it. One final note on the economic development or opportunity. Yes, there's going to be lots of economic developed, money coming into the community, but for the scope of land, the amount of jobs created from the existing phase 1 and the proposed phase 2 is very minimal when you look at SureSpan, which has, 105 employees for 11 hectares. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Come to the podium, please.
Hi there, folks. My name is Larry Jorgensen, and Millie and I have lived in Shawnigan Lake for a long, long time. I want to refer you to item R6, since those other topics have been well taken care of and spoken to by the previous people. And R6 is what Area E wants to, and this board is being asked to confiscate our land, 10% of our land in Shawnigan Lake, and given to Area E. This is simply legalized theft. Now, if you've read the report from your CVRD employees, you'll find that they say no, they don't recommend this carrying on. And I agree with that, because it's damn well stupid. Now, if anyone sitting at this table thinks that confiscation and theft of our resources and our money is reasonable, I suggest you go to the walls, bang your heads against the walls in rapid succession, and then come back with some common sense. We will not stand for it in Shawnigan Lake. It's that simple. And if by chance anyone at this table, this is a strange looking table, thinks that they can just take our land and our money, then I suggest you write a check to the Shawnigan Lake residents for somewhere between $30 and $50 million, because nothing is free. Okay? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will move on now. And we will go to, there's no delegations. Correspondence, we have C1, Grant and Aid, Electoral Area C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C1, recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Cowichan Therapeutic Riding Association for a rider scholarship to assist clients who face financial hardship because they no longer qualify for assistance once they reach the age of 18.
So moved? Moved and second? Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to C2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C2, the recommendation before you, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to CMS Food Bank Society for the purchase of food and fresh vegetables for food bank recipients.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you so much. There's no information. Moving on to reports. R1, report from the Development Services.
Did you want me to?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R1 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding development permit application DP 18E08 for Lot 7 Boys Road with a parcel identifier 000272256. And there is a recommendation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the staff report before you is for development permit application DP 18E08 for the property located at Lot 7 Boys Road. And this is the map of the subject property. And Boys Road is located in Electoral Area E. And Lot 7 is a vacant piece of land at the corner of Boys Road and River Court Road. Oh. There we go. So what is being proposed for the site is a new industrial building within the Coxsila Development Permit area. And a permit is required because this is within the, Coxsila Development Permit area. Any development activities cannot occur until a development permit is obtained. And you would note in the report that the site will share an access with the adjacent property, and a reciprocal access easement will be necessary. And the draft permit stated that the easement be in place prior to occupancy of the new building. And I just wanted to correct that the final permit would actually state that this would be required prior to issuance of a building permit. And I also just wanted to note that there were several revisions to this application in the initial submission. And the stormwater management plan in attachment F has now been updated as well, and it now reflects the current site plan that you see before you and the landscape plan as well. So just wanted to mention those two things. And staff does consider this application to meet the intent of the development permit guidelines and recommends approval. Thank you.
Is there any questions for staff? Director Nicholson.
Thank you. The APC made a number of recommendations, and I was wondering if you could provide some clarity on whether they were followed, and if not, why not? So one was around the lighting. I know that the angled down lighting on the building for the signs, but there was some concern about spillover lighting for the neighbors that are sort of a recreational zone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There is no lighting, I believe, on that northern elevation to where the recreational vehicles are on the opposite property. And in terms of the lighting, there's just a couple lights around the roller doors. I think that was attached, like shown on the plans. And yeah, the lighting for the sign is faced down towards the sign. So I think it was considered acceptable, meeting the guidelines. I think the lighting was considered part of the application.
Okay, and do we require LED lighting? And
I can't recall if that's what they put on the proposal, but yeah, sorry. I have to look at the plan.
I think they had some specific things in there. And I wasn't clear why underground wiring might be a problem.
Well, I think that just falls within the jurisdiction of hydro, so they'd have to go through to see if that's actually possible. Wasn't something we control. It's encouraged, so I think it's still in the guidelines and they can pursue that. But
okay, and so we were encouraging them also, I believe the APC was encouraging them to contribute to developing a pedestrian path along the front there, because there's plenty of room between the ditch and the existing trees. Was that considered or not, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. A pathway along River Court Road?
No, the Boys Road.
Boys Road. There's just some landscaping, and they needed it for parking. It wouldn't connect to anything at this point.
No, but there's a general push to try and make that whole area a little bit more pedestrian friendly, and that is one spot where there's plenty of space to do that.
Yeah, most of the pedestrian considerations were on the site, I would say, than connections on the street.
So, and on the back side of the building, there's no longer any gravel, or what that's changed, has it not?
Yeah, the building is kind of pushed towards River Court Road, so there's no access with vehicles along that edge
On the
anymore.
back edge. So
That
is
was initially proposed.
So has that increased the impervious area?
I don't believe so. I think it reduced it. There's less pavement. They've incorporated the landscaping they didn't have originally. So they're going to share one access. There's less access as well.
And I think that the APC were looking to make sure that there was an electric charging station here.
It wasn't part of the guidelines, so it wasn't a consideration.
Yeah,
It
so this is a
wasn't
real
further
issue for me, for our
considered.
area, because we're dealing with such out-of-date guidelines, and we're missing opportunities to do things that are just obviously going to be needed in the, well, now, they're needed now.
Yeah. The applicant did hear that. They did mention to me that, they did hear that, so,
Is the applicant here?
yes, they are
Does
here.
the applicant wish to add anything?
About the vehicle charging, or?
No, would you like to add anything else to this application that's being reported right now? And if you have any additional on the, you come to the podium, please, if you,
No, we don't have anything.
okay. All right. Director Nicholson, follow up?
I have one more question. The APC recommended native plantings and drought-resistant plants, and I know that some of the plants that were chosen, the dogwood and the mahonia, are native plants, but they're also using Japanese maple, which I think is not drought tolerant at all. And I recognize there's going to be an irrigation system, but we should still be trying to use plants that don't use a lot of water. So I'm wondering if that could be looked at again.
If you wanted to refer it back to staff, we could look at that.
Refer it back to staff for one tree.
Well, the landscape plan would have to be amended, and I think at this point we've recommended approval, so if you wanted to make it, some recommendations, I could take that back to the applicants.
Go ahead. Ms. Charoff? Oh, you got to turn your button on there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just drawing your attention to the development permit guidelines. The applicant is required to address the guidelines that exist, and we cannot place additional requirements on the applicant beyond what is specified in the development guidelines. So there's no specificity in the current guidelines around the specific types of plants that may or may not be used. Thanks.
I'll come back to you, Director Nicholson. I just have another speaker over here. Director Smith.
Through the chair to staff, I noticed the existing access removed and drainage ditch reestablished. Is there any access on this side for emergency equipment as a fire truck or anything with all these lots? It looks like they have doors coming out the back, but if there was a fire in the front or in the back and the fire department needed to access it, is there any access there for them to utilize?
Madam Chair, I think they would just use the road. They have access on River Court Road, so there would be nowhere to drive onto the site along River Court Road. The main access to both Lot 7 and Lot 8 is off Boys Road, and it's going to be shared with the reciprocal access easement.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I was also involved in the area plan for Boys Road, and there was a lot of discussion in the community there and how the safety, it came out of a 2050 speaker actually that helped out with that the off-road walking and the danger along the road, it is just something to consider. I realize it's not in the guidelines. There were two things. And of course, the electric vehicles is something that's going to be everywhere as well, but we have current guidelines that we have to follow, but I see that the applicants are here, so maybe they will consider that. Director Nicholson, I turn to you, the director of the area.
Well, I just want to clarify one more thing. The landscape plan, I mean, it's going to be an investment of, I think, over $12,000. So it just strikes me that it would be wise for the applicant, if they don't want to have a dead tree on their hands, to maybe reconsider that species. And can staff be flexible enough to allow that one tree, I think it's just one maple tree, to be reconsidered?
Yes,
Ms.
Madam
Herrera.
Chair. The general process when we do go through something like a landscape security process would be like they're securing the plan that they've proposed. In some cases, some of those plants may not be available when they even go to do the planting, so there's inherently some flexibility in these plans, but they would have to meet the intent and the size and the sort of general type of tree. So definitely they can still look at the availability of plants in the area and if there's a need to change that, I think they could do that still.
Follow-up, Director Nicholson?
No, I'll move the recommendation.
It's been moved. It's been moved and seconded. Is any more discussion? Go ahead with the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that development permit application number DP 18E08 for a new industrial development at Lot 7, Boys Road, parcel identifier 000272256 be approved.
Okay, seeing no other hands up, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Seeing none, motion is carried. That will go to our September 11th board. Moving on now to R2, report from the Development Services Division, Cowichan Lake Road. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R2 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number 02F17RS for parcel identifier 009845526, Cowichan Lake Road, and the staff report has 3 options. Staff are recommending option 1.
Welcome, Ms. Herrera, again.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. This report on the agenda is for rezoning application 02F17RS. And this application has been amended by the applicant, and it's returning, so somewhat familiar, I think, to the committee. The subject property is located within Electoral Area F, just south of Kapoor Road, and the property is approximately 19.5 hectares in area, or 48 acres. The site is heavily treed and currently vacant of any buildings, and there's an easement on a portion of the site for the transmission line that runs through the property. It's about 100 meters wide. So this application has been amended. The original application included an official community plan amendment to change the designation from forestry to suburban residential, and included a 9-lot subdivision. The amended application is to rezone the property only, and the applicant is now requesting to rezone from F1 Forest Resource to F2 Forestry Residential Zone, and is seeking a subdivision with a maximum of 3 lots. So this is the revised lot configuration concept, and the larger 11-hectare lot is located in the northern portion, and the lower half of the lot has 2 4-hectare lots. So staff is recommending approval of the rezoning, subject to various conditions as listed in Part 2A of the staff recommendation. Essentially, the conditions are required through the rezoning to put in place for future subdivision. And the reason that they're recommended through the rezoning is that they're not currently required at the subdivision stage. So the purpose of this is to impose these requirements onto the subdivision. And in addition, the proposed rezoning aligns with the forestry designation policy. So there is the ability of the CVRD board to waive the public hearing, which staff has recommended in option 1. And if you would wish to hold a public hearing, then that you'd need to choose option 2, which contains all the same conditions, just the difference being having the public hearing. Thank you, Madam Chair. I can help answer any further questions, and the applicant is also here as well.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to add anything?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for staff? Director Morrison.
I was going to move the recommendation. If there's a seconder, I'd speak to it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do you want to, option 1
Option 1.
has been moved and seconded. Do we need to have it read out? Everybody's, okay, we should probably read it out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that zoning amendment bylaw number 4289, PID 009845526 for application number 02F17RS be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading. Number 2, that it be recommended to the board that A, prior to consideration of adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 4289 for application number 02F17RS, PID 009-845-526, restrictive covenants be prepared and registered on title with all associated costs for covenant preparation and registration to be borne entirely by the applicant to secure the following. I, design and detail for static water source with a minimum capacity of 10,000 gallons, prepared by a qualified professional for the purpose of firefighting to the satisfaction of the CVRD Public Safety Division. II, dedication of 7-meter wide public trail corridor along the east parcel boundary to the satisfaction of the CVRD Parks and Trails Division. III, a habitat protection and tree retention plan prepared by registered professional biologists to secure critical habitat areas and wildlife corridors. Number 4, a wildland urban interface assessment be completed by a qualified professional and assessment report provided to the CVRD. And 5, a restriction on future development to a maximum of 3 lots. 2B, that the original referrals for bylaw number 4289 to BC Transit, Cowichan Tribes, Island Health, Ministry of Transportation, and Satlam Volunteer Fire Department be accepted. And 2C, that a public hearing be waived for application number 02F17RS in accordance with section 464-2 of the Local Government Act, as the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the Cowichan-Coxsila official community plan.
So it's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to it, Director Morrison?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
So I'm supportive of the application, and I've actually had some background on this too before I was sitting around this table as a member of and chair of the Area FAPC. I'm of two minds in this, in that we try and serve the community and serve those people that come through the door and make application to do things on the land. And this has been, I would imagine, a fairly grueling process for the applicant. But we don't rezone applicants, we rezone land. And I know that this is a small business person who's trying to do the best that he can with a holding that he has, and there has been some significant requests made of him, as noted in the staff report and the recommendation. There are residential zones all around this property, and I think that the requests that have been made by various advisory planning commissions and staff and directors are as best reflected in this application as can be hoped from an application of this sort. So I guess the system works when we challenge and put demands on applications so that they are best serving our communities. And yet I know that this has been a very long and trying process for the applicant. And I think that there's maybe a bit of a perverse balance in that, if this is supported and goes to the board and is rezoned, then the applicant can move forward with what's basically a family application and an attempt to bring some improvements to that community. I don't think it sticks out as much as some people might think. I think that this is a fair combination of demands from community and requirements of the applicant to move forward. So I would ask directors around the table to support this and move this forward to the board. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I have to say that I'm really disappointed we haven't had an opportunity to ask staff questions before there was a motion put on the table.
Do you have any questions to staff?
I do. I have one important one is, can a restrictive covenant ensure the recommendations of habitat protection and a tree retention plan and of a wildlife urban interface assessment?
I'm not sure if that is a rhetorical question.
No, I would want to know how.
I think I'll defer to our general
How
manager to
strongly-
comment on restrictive covenants.
Microphone.
Thank you. Through the chair, the intent of the covenants is to take the recommendations of the professionals that are being requested to prepare the reports and to assign those legally to the title of the property so they are secured.
And so we could be pretty confident that that will.
Yes.
Okay. So
Follow-up?
I'd like to speak to the motion, if I may.
Turn your microphone.
I agree with Director Morrison that staff have done a very good job of trying to find a compromise solution. But I have to say that this is a contentious issue in the community. The community has spent a lot of time in the last few years working on a local area plan, now a local area plan, but as part of the OCP review that was started back in 2015. So the real thrust of the discussions have been the need to stop, prevent further sprawl in Satlam. There has been an incredible amount of low-density residential development throughout Satlam that has converted forestry land to the large lot residential. And it has, there is more than enough out there to meet the needs. We have Pauldy just down the road, which is going to, when it, if and when it goes ahead, will add 500 families or something to the area. So this really is not the type of proposal that is in keeping with our need to limit growth to our urban containment areas and to protect our forests and maintain opportunities for wildlife to move around. And yes, it's a pretty, it looks like on the paper a reasonable compromise, but if you think about it, you're taking what could be a viable small ecoforestry type of a situation out of production and moving it into a rural residential situation. And along with that always comes fences and large dogs in these rural areas, which limits wildlife movement. You can plan for corridors, but basically it's just more sprawl. And I really don't think that approving this at this time is what the community wants. And unfortunately, we haven't completed this whole OCP revision and modernized our regulations so that it is very clear to everyone around the table. But I can assure you that that's the direction that we are moving, and it seems backward to me to approve an application that really ought to stay as forestry land. This will become, while I appreciate that it's reduced from I think it was originally a 5 or a 7 lot, I can't remember, subdivision, and it's down to 3 lots, but this zoning allows the 3 lots to have a total of 6 residences, so it's just really, I don't think, appropriate at all. So I will be voting against this. And I would add one more comment. I think on such a contentious issue, if the committee is interested in pursuing this further, I don't think it is appropriate not to go to public hearing. I think really the community needs to have an opportunity to speak on these kinds of things.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. Director Haim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for staff regarding 2AI. Design and details for the static water source on subdivision. Would the proponent be required to construct that?
It would be a requirement prior to final approval of the subdivision that, yeah, it be installed, it be available to the subdivision once it's complete.
Okay, because it just says design and details. Doesn't say design, it's a covenant, so design details and build.
Yeah, so it's requiring this information at the subdivision stage, and then through that subdivision, our referral response back to the ministry says that this is required prior to us providing a subdivision approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That will go to September 11th board. Thank you. Moving on now to R3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R3 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding development variance permit number DVP 19G01 for 1101 Chemainus Road. And the report has two options. Staff are recommending option 1. Welcome, Kasia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Subject property is located in Electoral Area G off Linton Crescent. Currently, the subject property includes a bed and breakfast, a cottage, as well as an existing retaining walls. It's located on the ocean. Here's the same perspective, but just drawn out. It's a bit clearer to see than the ortho. And here are some site photos of the existing retaining wall of the subject property. So recently, the area that doesn't currently have a retaining wall failed, and the applicant has come to the CVRD in order to address this public concern, as well as a concern about the stability of the slope. So the proposed development is to build a lock block retaining wall along the area where the slope failed. And this plan has been prepared by a professional engineer. The proposed development includes quite a large lock block retaining wall that is going to be backfilled in order to address this issue, as well as ensure that the cottage located at the top of the slope will not fail and fall down the slope should there be heavy rainfall or an earthquake. However, we do have a setback from a watercourse regulation that states no buildings or structures shall be located within 15 meters of the high water mark of the sea. And this application is proposed to be within 1.1 meters of the high water mark. And so a variance of 14.9 meters is required in order to permit this retaining wall to be constructed. So staff recognize that this is a significant variance request. However, given the public safety concern, as well as the fact that the professional has recommended this retaining wall, as opposed to one of using rockery, which would potentially cause further danger to the public and further failure, has recommended that the best solution for this site is a lock block retaining wall. So staff are aware that the guidelines don't support this type of lock block retaining wall. However, significant plantings will be put in place to try to mitigate the sightliness of this retaining wall. So staff recommend approval of the variance. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Director Smith, and then Director Salmon, Director Nicholson, and Director Haim.
Through the chair to staff, I understand that there's permits for the other work that's been done on that site. Has there been a correlation between the permits that were issued by the CVRD and the work that was done? When you look at the picture, it appears that there is definitely a fair amount of large walls going up that area. So is there documentation that match between the two? The permits that have been issued in the past and the work that's been done?
Through the chair, staff were not able to find any permits that were ever issued in relation to development permits for those retaining walls. We did ask the applicant to provide any documentation, and we did not receive it today at this time. So,
Are you the applicant? Would you like to add something? Come to the podium, please.
do have.
You have to speak in the
Sorry.
microphone, because
My-
we're being streamed live, so
Okay,
everyone can
right.
hear. Thank you.
I am the owner of the property, and I have done 3 other development permits with that property, that also, for all those walls, and including the cabin. So all of those have been done over the past 15 years that I've owned the property. So I do have them, and I do have them here. I
Follow-up,
don't
Director
know
Smith?
why it's not in the file of that property.
I think that we should see whether those permits equal what the work that's been done in the past to ensure that this isn't causing additional problems in the area that the permit is for now. I think that there could be drainage issues that are being caused by that.
So there's more information that you'd like
so
to
I
have, then
would-
I would
It
recommend that
it
you
has
would
been
meet.
actually engineered by Lukowicz Engineering and another company all the way through, and they have actually stamped all these walls that have been done, and there is drainage all the way through every level.
Thank you. Director Smith, follow up.
Yes, I'd like staff to have a look at the permits that have been issued in the past to ensure that the work that is done
So are
under
you
those.
referring this, are you
I'm
referring the
referring it-
application back for with staff for more information that
Yes.
you would like to see?
I'd like to refer it back to staff for more information.
Okay, it's referral. On the referral, is there, speaking to the referral, is there a seconder for the referral? It's been seconded.
I may add as well.
Just a second,
Sure.
please, I'm just going to, so we're just gonna now just speak to the referral, so
Okay,
just a second.
Mhm.
So, is there any, Director Morrison?
I understand the director's desire for staff to have a look at it, but in regards to the propriety, we don't interpret engineers' reports. We don't
Correct.
authorize, so
They have
I,
actually haven't seen any reports, is what I understood from staff, though. So it just, I know we can't authorize, but
I question if there's development permits been issued and there's ample evidence that this seems that it's may not be appropriate as a means for referral.
I move to the corporate secretary here to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If director wishes to refer something back to staff or a committee for further information, there's no criteria for that referral motion.
Thank you. So anyone else that wishes to speak to the referral, Director Acton?
Yeah, I'm questioning the validity of this as well. You know, here's someone who actually, for once, somebody's come forward to do the right thing and apply for development permit. She's done that in the past. It's obvious something needs to be done. And I know that lakefront and oceanfront is a tricky situation, but this is obviously one where the applicant's trying to do the right thing, and I think back to staff, we have staff issues. This is in essence a waste of everybody's time, in my opinion, sending this back.
Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to speak on the referral? Director Smith.
I think that it's important that the staff has a look at the prior permits and the engineering reports that went with it. They're saying they don't have it on record here at the CVRD, and that would be something that could impact what's being done, and they could be looked at together. If you don't have the documents from the prior permits and the engineering reports, how do you know that they're going to work together? I think that staff should have a look at the prior documents that should be on file.
Okay, so is there anybody else that wishes, Director Salmon, to the referral?
Thank you. I agree with Director Smith that we should see that. I don't know if it's directly on propriety, but we have a lot of these big rock walls in Mill Bay, and it seems that the complications that develop, it would be wise to have all the information.
Thank you. Director Kuhn on the referral.
The prior work has already been done. I see very little purpose in digging all this stuff up and having a look at the certificates or the review. I think it's just a delay.
Okay, I see no other hands. I'm gonna call the question on referral. All in favor? Opposed, if any? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's defeated.
May I add to that? Oh.
Not at the moment
Oh,
now,
sorry.
because we're going to get more information, and the
Oh.
next time it comes around, you could add to that.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry? Yes, I did. I have a speaker's list. Director Salmon?
Yeah, thank you. Just a question for staff on the neighboring properties. Has there been, I don't know the situation, but is there any chance that the new retaining wall would increase the storm force onto the neighbors and worsen erosion next door?
Okay, let me just show you. So the engineer did not speak to this in the report, but there actually is an existing retaining wall that is being maintained that you can see. Sorry, I don't have a way of showing you, but the image on the right-hand side shows the bottom of the existing retaining wall, so nothing would change with the construction of this retaining wall in relation to shoreline activities. They remain as is.
Follow-up, Director Salmon?
So there is a concrete retaining wall immediately next door that would be adjoining?
Sorry, do you mean the neighbor? Do they have a
Yeah.
retaining wall? No, I don't believe they have retaining walls.
So it's just an earth
Correct,
wall next to the new proposed one?
correct. Okay, so the applicant is saying that there is a retaining wall
There is.
on one side.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Director Nicholson?
Thank you. Just to follow along with that, so then do we require on the engineering for them to consider what the impacts will be on the neighboring shoreline when we do this, they propose a
Ms. Began?
new wall?
Through the chair, the guidelines do not speak to addressing matters of that nature.
So that's something that should probably be fixed, because everyone knows that shorelines work as a, one thing. I'm wondering, has it been considered, as moving the cottage back, being considered?
Through the chair, I did ask the engineer regarding that matter because it is quite close to the crest of the slope. He recommended that the positioning of the cabin would be okay if this retaining wall were to be constructed. So there'd be no need to move the cabin.
Follow-up, Director Nicholson?
Well, is it conforming with the regulations? It seemed awfully close to the edge.
Once
I'm
again,
not sure that the solution of the wall is the better solution all around. I guess I feel like I don't have enough information about the impacts of this wall on the shoreline and whether there is another option of moving the cottage and, so you can weigh them. I realize something has to be done, but I don't feel like I have enough information.
so unfortunately, like I mentioned before, staff don't have any records of development permits in relation to activity on the site. We did ask the applicant to provide it prior to this meeting, but it wasn't provided, so maybe there is something, but we on record do not have anything. And staff are constrained based on the guidelines and what they say in terms of what the engineering report needs to address. So until our guidelines are more robust and speak to matters of the impacts of retaining walls and shorelines, staff's hands are tied.
Director Haim? Oh, staff, sorry, Mr. Tippett, would you like to make a comment?
Madam Chair, it's a bit unusual. I just wanted to ask Kasia a question. Kasia, is this retaining wall that in the present application that they're proposing to build actually on the shoreline, or is it up the hill? I got the impression from the photos on the site that there is already a wall on the ocean, and this one's actually not going to interface with the shore. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that's what I just mentioned. On the right-hand side in that drawing, it shows that there's an existing retaining wall,
and then
Right.
set back a few feet will be the new retaining wall. So this new
okay.
retaining wall will not have any impact in relation to existing shoreline activities.
Right, so Madam Chair, I would then say that that relates to Director Salmon's question about, which was a good question, of, you know, a new seawall sort of deflecting energy to the adjacent property, but this particular project proposed is not going to create a new seawall, it's actually up the slope.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett, for clarifying that. Director Haim.
Thank you. My concern revolved around the neighboring property. If this area eroded, even with an existing seawall, how would it not potentially be affected by further ocean activity? Like, even though it may be set back, that area was washed away. So the wave action was getting up to that level. Am I incorrect on that?
That one's-
Stormwater, okay.
Yeah, it's quite high.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Morrison, and then Director Kuhn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I've got the site photo or the shot from the water of this site, and you know, this is what is sometimes very difficult about the deliberations that we make around here, and that I'm sure that in some eyes that this is an attractive waterfront, and in mine it is you know, the worst of a shoreline that I could see. But we know that the Area G shoreline stabilization development permit is old and weak. It doesn't address things such as habitat, and it's a real challenge to be able to look at a site like this and to make any other decision but to support this because of the hazard that's present. And though I will be reluctantly supportive of the motion.
Director Kuhn, and then Director Smith.
Yeah, I think some of the questions that were raised are kind of academic, because as far as I'm concerned, it just has to be built. It's obviously a safety concern. Some of the other questions, well, I mean, nothing is perfect in this world, so it's not going to be a perfect solution, but the best that we can find, so I'm all in favor of it.
Director Smith.
Through the chair to the building inspector, if Mr. McDonald could maybe answer this question. Looking at the photo that's in front of us right now, you can see that the cabin is cantilevered over the section there. What is the concerns based on that type of situation? I'm not sure if the insurance company would have that situation where there is no fence to protect anyone coming out of the cabin and accidentally falling. Is the cabin situation the way it is it safe where it is? And because it does look like it's cantilevered over into
Point of order?
that area.
Yeah. Director Morrison.
It's beyond the scope of the application before us.
Thank you. And it is because there's an engineer's report that is in our application, but is it called, I'll turn to Corporate Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
There is a question to the inspector about the design and everything that we have in our application from an engineer, and she would like Mr. McDonald to speak to it. There's been a point of order that is not relevant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The expectation that the building inspector would interpret what a qualified professional had in their report is something that is not appropriate at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we will accept that. Okay, I finished my speakers list. I'm going to call the question. There is no more? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 19G01 for 11101 Chemainus Road, to vary Electoral Area G, Saltaire Gulf Islands zoning bylaw number 2524, section 3.24, to reduce the setback from the sea for a proposed shoreline retaining wall from 15 meters to 0.1 meters be approved.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, it's carried. That will go to the September 11th board. Moving on now to R4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R4 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding development permit application DP 19A 10 for Trouse Road. And there are two options. Staff are recommending option 1.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Anthony Price, and I am the assistant planner assigned to this application. The proposed development is located within the Bamberton Industrial Lands, just south of Mill Bay, and below the northernmost section of the Malahat Drive. The property is a multi-zone parcel, the majority of which is zoned I-1A Bamberton Light Industrial, with a portion to the west zoned as Rural Resource 2, and the east Heavy Industrial along the water. The property has a complex history, which I'll briefly summarize. The site was originally used as a cement facility. Constructed in 1912, this facility was first of its kind in Canada and a significant economic driver in the area and throughout the early 20th century. The cement plant was in and out of production until the mid-80s, when it was finally decommissioned due to high maintenance costs. This proposed structure is situated on a flat section of the Bamberton Industrial Lands, as you can see by these site visit photos. It's vacant of any neighbors and any debris from the previous use. The proposal consists of one 963.2 square meter steel and fabric structure with a concrete block foundation. The proposed is used as a contractor's workyard and storage structure, which will contain salts for highway maintenance from the contractor MCon Services Limited. The building design guidelines for the South Cowichan OCP are not applicable to this development proposal of this type. The proponent, MCon Services, is the South Island Highway Maintenance Contractor from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, which takes effect early this fall. This application was expedited for review, that a recommendation of EASC is in accordance with the procedures bylaw number 4267 on the basis that the proposal is an essential public service and necessary for the safe operations of our region's highways. The proposed structure is situated on a flat section of the the proposal incorporates a containment liner under the front half of the structure, as you can see on that right document image there. This covers all entrances and prevents any salt or rainwater to leave the structure footprint. This will mitigate any stormwater potential to spread in the surrounding area, and also fulfills the stormwater environmental protection development permit area. The proposal fulfills the overall intent of the applicable development permit area guidelines. Staff recommends proposed development application to be approved. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. Thank you.
Does the committee have any questions for Mr. Price?
Yes, thank you. Just on the possibility of leaching or runoff of salt, I know you've got they've planned a line or a containment ladder. Do you know the lifespan of that line?
I am not aware of the lifespan, but I could direct you to Brian from Spanmaster, who is in charge of these structures.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much. Basically, the liner is like a heavy vinyl liner. UV is the thing there that really breaks down that. When you put it in the ground and cover it up, you're decades and decades, probably a lot longer than the site would be used there. I've seen them come out after 20 years and they're still, you actually can clean them up with Windex and they're still like new. The water and the salt has really virtually no effect at it. And as long as sunlight isn't getting at it, which it's underneath the ground and it can't, then basically it'll contain it and can be taken up, take the gravels and stuff right out of it, lift it up, fold it all up, put it on a truck and leave. No problem. It's been done before many times, tried and
Follow up,
tested.
Director Salmon? Is this to the
Yeah,
applicant
just-
or staff?
Probably for staff.
Staff, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for the answer. So just thinking about how long salt lasts in the environment, though, I'm wondering, I wasn't clear where on the site this, is it close to a creek or the ocean? In the event of a possible leak, where would the runoff go?
So the site is very flat. As you see on the left side, that site plan shows topographic lines. The entire area where this structure is proposed, it's flat. Now, it is far above the water. The waterfront, you can't see it from here, of course. The water, here, that arrow, sorry. That arrow is where the structure is, the proposed location, far above any water or any kind of ocean action. There's no streams nearby, there's no sensitive lands. It's been vacant for a long time, so shouldn't have any issues in that matter.
Follow up, Director Salmon, you're finished, okay? Is there any other questions for staff? Okay, we can read the recommendation, staff recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendations before you are that it be recommended to the board that development permit application number DP 19A10 for parcel identifier 001-170-465 be approved. And number 2, that the general manager of land use services be authorized to approve minor revisions to permit DP 19A10 in accordance with the intent of development permit guidelines of official community plan bylaw number 3510.
Moved, second, moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Oh, yeah, we could do that. Thank you. I'm going to have a 5-minute break, so if that's all right with everyone, we're going to recess for 5 minutes. If we could try and gather back up, please. Jennifer, are you okay? Can I have the directors come back to their seats, please? Welcome back, everyone. Moving on now to R5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R5 is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding housing needs report requested for resolution to include incorporated areas, and there is a recommendation.
Okay, welcome, Ms. Breen.
Thank you. So
In the spring of this year, the province passed Bill 18 and has required local governments to produce housing needs reports with a specified criteria by 2022. And then recently, through UBCM, they have announced that there are grants available for local governments to apply for, in fact, to complete this work. The staff report in front of you today and the recommendation is that the CVRD apply for the money that's available, which is about $150,000. And I say approximately because it depends on which incorporated areas agree to come into this grant with us, if it is in fact a regional application, which has a deadline of November 29th. In order to apply for this grant with the province requires a resolution from each incorporated area and also from the regional district to advance the application. The recommendation today is that the CVRD proceed with this regional application and that as a first step, the CVRD write to the 4 incorporated local governments and request a resolution for them to participate in this grant with us. Staff would return in approximately a month with those decisions, and then a second report would follow advising which incorporated areas are participating and ask for a second resolution to advance the grant application by the 29th of November.
Any questions for staff? Director Wilson? And
Thank you,
Director
Madam
Morrison.
Chair. This is great, this grant money is available, and I'm all in favour of going for it. I'm a bit confused, though, by the data sources paragraph here, which says, Couch and Attainable Housing Strategy Background Report did not provide data that fully met the housing needs report requirements. Didn't we give them $750,000 a year just to report on exactly this kind of thing, and yet we have to rely on other data sources?
The staff has reviewed the report through the chair mentioned, and the report doesn't break down the electoral area information, which is a requirement from the province. Thank you.
Director Morrison.
Thank you. I think I'm supportive of at least taking this first step and engaging the interest of our municipal partners in this. I think I have 2 questions. One, noticing the funding breakdowns, it appears to me that if we're successful in getting the amounts that are mentioned in the appendices, that it would appear that there will be fairly substantial amounts given to low population, smaller electoral areas, and the big municipal sort of powerhouses in the region are not getting a lot of funds in relation to their population. And yet I can't remember what the breakdown was exactly, but $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. So I kind of get a sense that there's going to be a little bit of subsidy of some of the more densely populated areas by the resources that would be brought in if we're funded to this extent. So that would be my first question: is the equity of the grant funding available appropriate based on the population figures? And my second question would be, is this an activity that's appropriately taken on within the organization, the CVRD itself, or is it perhaps something that is along the Couch and Housing Association's mandate to conduct this kind of work? We have done flow-through funding exercises before. Would it be appropriate for them to take this on if we weren't to do it?
Through the chair, I'll start with the second question first because it'll partially answer the first one. The data requirements that are being requested by the province are outside of the the more narrower mandate in terms of the other agency. This data requirement is a perfect next step in terms of the population, housing, and employment projections that we recently completed through Rene. And it's also perfectly aligned with the timing of the CVRD's modernization of the OCP. North Cowichan is currently opening up their OCP, and so is Ladysmith. And these are requirements also within those the OCP processes, which include consultation. So a big part of this is consultation, and we can. The timing is actually perfect for us and for those other two incorporated areas. The funding formula, interestingly enough, if you calculate it individually, it surpasses, I think, by about 75,000 of the, it had each electoral area and each incorporated area apply individually, but the province is encouraging regional districts to apply on behalf of electoral areas and incorporated areas for efficiencies.
Follow-up, Director Morrison. Move to Director Smith and Director Acton.
Through the chair to staff, would this include the cost of staff time? And does the staff have the capacity to take on a project like this?
Thank you, through the chair. The staff has informally talked to Rene and some other potential consultants in terms of doing this work. The cost would probably cover the data calculations, the consultation, but not direct staff costs, which are already budgeted for.
Follow-up, Director Smith?
Excuse me, but are you saying that it's already budgeted for staff to continue in this direction?
In the case of the CVRD, through the chair, these data requirements support the OCP work, and they would be contracted. And the consultation aspect related specifically to these data requirements would be contracted, so staff does not see a lot of additional staff work. And in fact, if this was advanced, that we were successful in getting 4 additional resolutions, just informal conversations through planning staff in the other incorporated areas, they would welcome this as alleviating work instead of adding additional work.
Okay. Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think some of my questions have been answered, but so this makes a lot of sense for the harmonization to have more data for the electoral areas. I see that as important, and I guess my question is, are we creating a new function now? Are we creating something else where I'm really disappointed that our new function that we just went to referendum for isn't providing this kind of information? So that here we are again having a very similar conversation that we need to know what kind of information we need for our communities. So yeah, I guess I'll stop there as my question.
Through the chair, this Bill 18 is relatively new. These are data requirements. They are required by 2022. So I don't know the data processes of the affordable housing in terms of data collection, but I'm not clear that all of these were specified at the time that they were collecting the information, because I know that when we were working with Rene, it wasn't available. And we did try to move those data projections further along, and we weren't able to because of the full statement in terms of the additional 50 items.
Thank you. Maybe we could go ahead. Oh, Director Nicholson, sorry. I didn't have you down. Oh, you'd like to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Right, can we have it read, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a letter be sent to the City of Duncan, Town of Ladysmith, Town of Lake Cowichan, and Municipality of North Cowichan councils requesting support in the form of a resolution for for the Cowichan Valley Regional District to apply for and administer grant funding from the Union of BC Municipalities to prepare a regional housing needs report on behalf of electoral areas and municipalities within the region.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. One opposed. Moving on now to R6, report from Community Planning Division.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R6 is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding electoral area official community plan harmonization for local plan boundaries Area B, Shawnigan Lake, and Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora. There are two options noted, and staff are recommending option 1.
Ms. Breen.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to just provide a little bit of context here and a reminder, and also to some of the audience who may not be as familiar with the harmonized official community plan process. This process has been underway since April of last year. And the general structure of this harmonized OCP has been a review of the current 7 electoral area OCPs to harmonize them to one main OCP that has an overarching policy framework. And within that, 9 local area plans. Those local area plans have been developed following the boundaries of the existing official community plans. They include content more of a narrative, historical nature, and they also include the content of the region or the official community plan local designations. So in the case of the electoral area E, official community plan, which currently also includes a portion of electoral area F in the official community plan. About 3 or 4 years ago, they embarked on a modernization of their official community plan. And at that time, there was a consideration for this particular portion of electoral area B to be included in the modernization of that official community plan. Over the last 3 or 4 years, for a series of different reasons, that plan was not modernized. And as we embarked onto the harmonized official community plan, staff came to ESC in November of 2018 and asked for a resolution to support that this particular plan, electoral area E, would be modernized in the context of the harmonized official community plan. At that time, staff did not seek clarification on this portion of area B to be included in the electoral area E, what was to become their local plan. So in the course of this summer of 2019, staff has met with various different APCs, and one of them included Area B, and was showing the Area B APC some of these maps, and some of them were not aware of these map boundary potential changes, and staff said that they would research it and they would come back to ESC for clarity. Hence the staff report today. Staff, for the 3 reasons that are stated in the staff report, staff is recommending that the electoral area boundaries, the current OCP boundaries, form the basis of the local area plan in the harmonization, because it has appeared that there hasn't been sufficient consultation with Area B, although I've been informed that there has been more than I'm aware of. It could result in confusion because we already have an Area F zoning bylaw that is being considered in part of Area E, and we would also then have part of Area B's zoning bylaw. So for the purpose of transparency and for simplicity, at this time, staff has made this recommendation to retain as is. If the committee decides otherwise, then staff would also recommend for some additional consultation with Area B. I hope that satisfactorily explains some of the history.
Thank you. Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I know that the Area B people that live on the other side of the Coxsila consider themselves Area E, and they're very strong about that. So you're saying it would keep it simple, and with this, with the excuse me, with the route that you're on now, do you see that side of Area B being able to have the closer distinction with their Area E neighbors?
Through the chair, I have stated in the staff report it does make geographic sense for it to be part of Area E. And we're talking essentially about 400 residents. That's the, in terms of who lives in that portion of Area B. So yes, it does make geographic sense to do that.
Follow-up, Director Acton?
Thank you. So by saying just 400 residents doesn't actually give a good picture. I did ask finance what the percentage was, and no one's here from finance, but I think it was quite high, like almost 30% of Area B of land is over, and property taxes and that. So it's quite large area. So I think they deserve to have their own distinction when it comes to land use and the development of their community.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Yes, Director Acton's right. We're talking about the official community plan, the land use portion of it, and currently, I mean, well, to take us back, I have had a steering committee of community members working on the modernization or review of the OCP since 2015, and who and they include a couple of people from the Area B portion that is included on the map there. And, you know, our review has really not gone well, as you know. We've been overtaken by the harmonization process most recently after a number of problems along the way that were all out of our hands. So at the same time, we've had the community stay engaged and stay committed to seeing this through. And I really think it would be unfortunate to now to go to them and say, well, we're going back to the old boundary, which really from the community's perspective doesn't make any sense. And I think a good example was the cannabis application that we heard not that long ago up on Rosedale Road. And there was a situation where the Shawnigan APC provided comment on an application in this portion of the area on the other side of the river. There was no one at that meeting of the APC that represented or knew anything about the neighborhood in Cowichan Station. And yet they were commenting on what turned out to be a very important application for the community. So I think it's really important. They feel more connected to Cowichan Station. I think consistency of the land use regulations would be, and policies and regulations are really important to them. And it's certainly an area that needs to be modernized. So I understand it would make staff's job simpler to go back to the old way, but I think that that's taking a step back, and I really don't think it makes sense at this time.
Director Morrison, then Director Salmon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. And it's not often that I feel myself getting confused the deeper we get into this, but my understanding was that the harmonized official community plan concept was going to bring some certainty and clarity to those areas that aren't subject to more dense community type of scenarios, small hamlets and that sort of thing, and that would, you know, help to clarify rural resource activities in sort of across the region and provide clarity that way. And I'm not wanting to confuse the issue with the Satlam discussion that has gone on, but you're using terms like coterminous local plan boundaries and the likes, and so for clarity's sake, are we talking about the local area plans being the electoral area legal boundaries? Or are they going to overlap electoral area legal boundary lines? Because I was fully accepting of that notion if we went to a harmonized process that Satlam proper was going to have a local plan, and that we would have electoral areas in general have an area plan. And keeping in mind, this isn't land use regulation through zoning. This is just official community plan. So I'm feeling a little confused on this. Can you provide us with some clarity?
Through the chair.
Ms. Breen.
The current OCPs, for the most part, follow the electoral area boundaries. Not entirely, but for the most part. In the case of Area E, OCP, it includes a portion of Area F, the OCP. The zoning bylaws are separate. For the purpose of the local plans, for the most part, they follow the OCP boundary, which in most cases follows the electoral area boundary, but not in all cases. So for the Area E local plan, which will continue to include the portion of Area F, the question that, or what staff is asking EASC to consider today is, should it move forward with a portion of Area B or not? If it moves forward with a portion of Area B is shown here, which was the intent at the beginning of the electoral Area E modernization, it would change the current OCP boundary, which is what the local plans are following for the most part. So we have the plans done either way, with a portion of Area B and without a portion of Area B. We can go either way with this. It was important for staff that the community have clarity that this was the direction of EASC to go forward with.
Okay, I have Director Salmon.
Thank you. I may be a bit confused too, but so are there property tax implications for this, for the other residents of Area B? Is there any change on that front?
For the purpose of the OCP boundary, no. Or the local plan boundary, no.
Either way, like if we.
Either way.
Okay, so just to
Follow up, Director
it
Salmon?
seems that this is a long-standing issue, you know, illogical both from geography and for the Cowichan-Stayson community. So it seems to me if both directors are in favor of not going this way, if seizing this opportunity to try to change it, I'd support them. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
So I'd like to move option 2, that the boundary be non-conterminous, but I'd also like to add wording, additional wording to it, so I could do a second motion, or can I?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Director Nicholson. There has been no recommendation for option 2, so you can format it whichever way you
Okay.
wish.
So I would like to move option 2 a coterminous boundary with, and that staff be directed to harmonize the zoning so it's consistent throughout the Couch and Cook-Sila local area plan. And I'd like to speak to that if I have a seconder.
You're seconding that motion? It's been moved and seconded.
Thank you.
Option-
So
Did you get that
as
down?
we try to move forward on modernizing the electoral area E OCP, or the local area plan now, it's really important that you harmonize the zoning as well, because we've had an ongoing issue with a 24-year-old OCP for Area E that has its own zoning bylaw, but for the portion that is in Area F, we use the Area F zoning bylaw. So the policy that is supposed to support the zoning or guide the zoning, that link is not happening. And it is an issue on the Salem side, and it will now be an issue with the Area B if this option is an added issue with the Area B. And so it would help staff to have direction to be able to start harmonizing the zoning part of it so that it all comes together at the same time and clears up a lot of the kind of messiness. I hope I made sense.
Director Morrison.
This is quite unexpected from my perspective, in that the inputs to this point have been on an OCP level basis, which isn't regulatory. And the direction that I've heard from steering committee folks is that there is absolutely a desire for a regulatory regime that was developed and applicable to the Salem area, that wasn't necessarily a broader entirety of electoral area E regulatory policy. So I think that I would have to seek some input from some of my steering committee folks and APC members before I would be supportive of that. I think the last direction around the zoning was that Salem have the opportunity for self-determination around their regulations as a subset or a local area plan community that may have differences from the broader electoral area E zoning bylaw. So I couldn't support moving forward on this, but I would be interested in hearing what the steering committee had said on this. And so if this was to move forward, I would ask that it be referred to the Area E and Area F steering committees for comment. And hope that there would be a seconder.
You're adding to another.
I'm making a referral motion.
A referral motion. Makes sense too. Okay, is there a seconder for the referral motion? Director Acton?
I would second that if Area B was added as well.
Okay, seeing yes. Okay, so discussion now on referral. Director Nicholson.
So
Can
I
you turn
think,
your microphones off, please? The ones who aren't speaking.
so I think I need some clarity on who we're referring this to. We've had a Salem local area planning committee that is a combination of people from Area F and Area E from the Salem community. We have had an Area E OCP review steering committee, which has included people from Area B, Area E, and Area F. And we have the Area E APC, which again includes people from Area B, Area E, and Area F. And in cases where applications are actually in Area F, they are often referred to the Area F APC, which does not, I believe, have anyone from Satlam sitting on it. So I would like clarification on who we're referring this to.
Is that to staff or is Director Morrison?
We have had an Area F steering committee in regards to our OCP, and I believe there was a Satlam local area plan, and there's also the APC from Area B. I'm just, in an abundance of caution, noting that input that I've heard in regards to the process to date was that there was a concern that the Satlam local area plan not simply be the Area E official community plan. And that's what I'd like the clarification on.
Director Nicholson. Oh, yeah, Ms. Breen.
Through the chair.
Yes.
There was a second resolution in November of 2018 that did speak specifically to Satlam, saying that it would be a neighborhood plan that would reside in both local plans. And right now it is located in duplicate in Area E local plan and Area F local plan as the beginning context based on that resolution for development in the modernization.
Whoa, just a second. Follow up, Director Morrison, then I'll go to Director Nicholson and then to Director Acton.
Hence my request for referral, because we're the motion, as I understand it, is to go into the regulatory zoning for harmonization. And that's a step beyond the official community plan process.
Through the chair, the resolution in November of 2018 was designations OCP only.
Okay, and now I have Director Nicholson and Acton.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but you have an OCP, which is a policy document, and land designations, and those guide what you would have in your zoning bylaws, the regulatory part. So, at some point in this harmonization, modernization process, I anticipate that we will have to take our harmonized OCP and harmonize the zoning bylaws. Do we not have to do that?
Ms. Breen.
Through the chair. Yes, the legislation, Local Government Act, directs us to ensure that OCPs and zoning bylaws are consistent. So in the process of the harmonization, there will be a harmonized zoning bylaw as well. And should a ESC advance option 2, then to follow that, the zoning regulations at some point would need to be consistent with the Area E designations.
Follow up, Director Nicholson.
So all I am proposing, for clarity, is that we move forward on harmonizing these two challenging pieces of the Area E local area plan. And this is not in any way to take away Satlam's independence or ability to control its how the regulations end up being. I think I am very supportive, and in fact, I'm all about making sure that the community is driving this process. And we do have a Satlam local area plan group that includes people from across the area who would be well equipped to do that. So I am merely asking that we speed up on the harmonization zoning part of this so that it all comes together in a timely way.
Director Acton.
I guess that's kind of my question, is if we're going to get to the same spot, but by doing this, we're actually making it more difficult to get there in the long run. I want to support the people of Area B, but really in Area E on that side, but I also can see that we're putting a wedge in
On the
here to
referral.
try and get there sooner.
speaking
Is that
on the
correct?
referral.
Okay, so my question is, by creating this new recommendation, are we actually slowing down the process to get to the finish line in the end?
Ms. Breen?
In terms of actually harmonizing the zones in E, F, and B to be consistent with the designations, should the designations be harmonized, that's probably a several-month process, and it could trigger a bit of a delay. Yes. The work is, because we're just starting and the calculations are quite labor-intensive, and they're happening mostly through our GS department. We haven't actually worked out all of the formulas yet, so we're actually having to do that on a broader scope before we can actually come into E, B, and F to make sure that they're part of the harmonized zoning bylaw.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we will get to the point where the people on the other side of the Coke Isla, even though they're in Area B, will have more of a Area E OCP and community plan, and they'll have that designation.
Through the chair, should ESC provide direction that the portion of Area B becomes part of the Area E local plan, we would harmonize the designations at this stage, and the zones would follow, but not immediately. So yes, in the long run. Either way, it will achieve, the harmonization of the zones will happen regardless of whether B remains in B or stays in E.
Okay, so I have Director Morrison, and then I'm going to read the referral after he's spoken, so I can see where we're at, actually.
Thank you. And, you know, this has been incredibly convoluted for a full term, I think. And I'd really ask the committee to support completing the visionary OCP part of this exercise and reviewing and adopting the finished product before we get into the regulatory and the zoning. We've heard from staff that this could include delays and the likes, and let's not further complicate what's already been a very complicated process.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor in the referral. Could you read me the referral, please? Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That option 2 in the report from the Community Planning Division, regarding electoral area official community plan harmonization, local plan boundaries, Area B, Shawnigan Lake, and Area E, Cowichan Station, Glenora, be referred to steering committees for electoral areas B, E, and F for further comment.
Okay, everyone's all clear on that? Clear? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Moving on now to R9. Oh, woo, I really want to move along. Woo-hoo, okay, R7, my apologies. Report from community planning again, and go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
So the item R7 is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding referral of amendment bylaw from the municipality of North Cowichan. There are 2 options noted in the staff report. Staff are looking for direction.
Director Wilson,
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself for a possible conflict here.
and what is the conflict? You have to state it.
I did obtain a grant from the VIMC for the Cobble Hill Fair of $1,000 to help with that, and I am a non-driving member of VIKA, which is the Vancouver Island Karting Association, which has recently started racing there again, so there is a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tippett, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have anything to add because Kathleen did such a wonderful job introducing the item. It's really just a referral from North Cowichan. Some of the facts were set out. I sent out an email late yesterday concerning a presentation that was made to you earlier at the start of the meeting around noise. North Cowichan is basically seeking the input of the regional district if we have interests that may be affected by their proposed rezoning of this site. And just for clarity, the rezoning would affect the existing site as well as the additional lands to the north and to the east of the current site. So we're seeking direction if there is any, and we will gladly communicate that direction back to North Cowichan on behalf of the board.
Director Morrison.
Just
Director Nicholson and Director Acton.
question on process. They're seeking regional district recommendation. And would this recommendation, if we were to make one from Electoral Area Services, then go to the board for affirmation? And would we be looking at a one director, one vote at the board? And would the board be sending the recommendation?
Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The member municipality is looking for a comment from the regional district. So the regional district would be commenting, and that would come from the board. And so any recommendation this committee makes, of course, would go to the board.
Thank you. And Director Nicholson?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion when it's appropriate to do so.
We'll wait till, okay. Director Acton?
So this, besides all the getting caught up in the facts or lack of facts and lack of well-defined maps in our package or anything like that, if I just think about, we don't really want North Cowichan telling us about our land use. So what would happen if we just had no comment, like we've done on other applications, like liquor board type stuff?
It's not our application.
Right. But just like we don't like them to comment on our applications necessarily. So what would happen, my question is to staff, what would happen if today our resolution is to just have no comment?
Mr. Tippett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we would just communicate back to the municipality of North Cowichan and say the regional district has no comment on the matter of the proposed bylaws before their council.
Follow up, Director Acton. I go to Director Kuhn and then Director Smith. Director Kuhn.
Yes, I don't really want to get involved with any business in North Cowichan because we don't want them involved in our decision-making process in electoral areas. So, and I could just see the risk that if we comment on their development, that in the future, and we've had events or times when some of the councillors from North Cowichan tried to intervene in electoral areas, and we didn't enjoy that very much, and I still wouldn't enjoy it. So I'm not willing to make any comments on that application.
Director Smith?
Well, what we heard during public input, there is definitely an issue within the electoral areas that are going to be having the noise in their areas, and that really concerns me. I think that electoral area E is heavily impacted by an increase in noise, and I think we should, as a group, be supportive of electoral area E in that concern that their community has. We can say, as a group, not that we pass on this and making a comment to North Cowichan, but we also have a health. We sat through strategic planning. We talked about livability. We talked about sustainability. We talked about a lot of things that make our communities and why the CVRD is an area that people want to live. So I think it's really important that if people in Area E are finding it hard to live there, to make changes that will increase the impact on them, then maybe we need to be supportive of those residents in their issue.
Director Morrison and then Director Haim.
I think I have a question through to perhaps our General Manager, perhaps Mr. Carruthers. Is there anything that would restrict an electoral area director from making application to appear as a delegation and to represent the interests of their constituents at North Cowichan that would be separate from this process, where the CVRD board itself didn't, or if they chose not to make a recommendation, but the electoral area director could still represent their constituents?
Is it Mr. Carruthers, or is it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that there would nothing that would preclude the area director from representing their constituents in terms of an adjacent planning issue. I think we've had that conversation in the past, that there is a difference between the board or the committee taking a position on an application versus an elected official representing their constituents on an adjacent matter adjacent to their electoral area. So I do not believe, and if we have a discussion and find that that's contrary, we'll certainly advise the committee, but in the meantime, my recommendation would be that the area director can represent her constituents in that planning process without obliging the entire board to take a position on a matter. That is an option.
Director Haim.
Thank you. I appreciate and understand the comments that have been made about kind of getting involved with an adjoining area's business, but at the same time, if there are residents within the electoral areas that are impacted by it, I think, in my personal opinion, we are kind of not fulfilling our responsibility if we don't make comment if there are concerns. I mean, if there's no concerns, fine, then say there's no concerns. But no comment if there are concerns is abdicating responsibility to some degree. And put forward in a professional, well thought out manner, if North Cowichan was to somehow take offense to that, I believe that's their challenge, not our challenge. And there were concerns expressed with regards to noise, and the comment that the boundaries themselves do not stop those items from going across the boundaries. And that's the reality. They've asked us for comment. It's not binding on them in any way, shape, or form. They can choose to ignore the comment, and I respect that with regards to their abilities and their responsibilities to their residents. So, like I said, I'm concerned about the lack of a comment when there have been concerns expressed. If those concerns are not valid, then again, I think that needs to be said.
Director Kuhn, Director Salmon, then Director Kuhn.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should respond, and it's a long-standing issue. It's a regional issue, and I think we really owe the residents a response, and I would also like to see it through the lens of the Cowichan 2050, the regional framework, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Kuhn?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize my concern that we're inviting then comments on anything that we do, and we don't want that.
We also just heard that the area director themselves have an opportunity to represent their community as well. And who am I turning to? Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I think I would agree with alternate Director Hain. You know, we have our responsibility is to think regionally, and I think we're letting down our community when they're so affected by a land use decision anywhere if we don't speak up and let people know how we feel. I think it is very helpful when other jurisdictions feel obliged to provide input to us, and it's, you know, I welcome input from North Cowichan when they feel that there is something that they will be affected by on a land use decision that we're making. We can't make the best decisions unless we have everyone's input, and that's our job. And I really don't understand this territoriality type of approach. I would like to move that the CVRD provide a written response to the municipality of North Cowichan that the proposed bylaw number 3761, zoning amendment bylaw motorsport circuit 2019, would not be in the best interest of the community because of the risks and impacts related to noise, the environment, and the intent of Cowichan 2050.
It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. Oh, do you have,
I guess I would.
Director Acton, you have a question?
Yes, please. I would turn to legislative services, like, even when you say the word community, it'd be nice if you put then the community of Satlam, or perhaps we could get staff to write a better recommendation. But
Director Morrison.
Yeah, I don't know that I could support this because of the fairly general nature of the concerns raised. It's essentially saying that there's a recommendation to deny from this group, and I don't think that that's our job. I think if there's comment, we should provide specificity. And that one of a general comment of this nature is going to bring on exactly what Director Kuhn is stating, that there can be recommendations of any sort of general nature coming from, solicited or not, from other jurisdictions. And I have a real concern with that. I know that there's specificity around a water service that has been installed that goes through to this facility that was completely inadequate for neighboring jurisdictions, being us and some of our land use issues that we have at Bings Creek. Now, if we were going to provide comment, yes, we can provide comment around the specificity of noise. We can provide comment about provision of services. But a comment that just says, in essence, deny, and without any specificity, I can't support that.
Okay, Director Nicholson.
I am not quite sure how to provide the level of detail without, I was thinking about this when I was making this motion, writing this motion down, and I could have gone on for pages on what should be in the motion as far as specificity goes. I think staff are pretty aware of the issues. They heard quite a bit from the community. We can provide them with lots of background information. Would it be appropriate for the response to come back to this committee for a look at it? Would that help allay your concerns? And on the issue of the word community.
Mr. Tippett would like to answer that.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there is a bit of a deadline, I guess I would say. We've been requested to get our comments back before the end of this month, and that would not be possible if we were to go to another committee. So I hate to put the pressure on, but it would be, if we are going to have comment, we probably should try and figure it out today if possible.
Director Kuhn, oh, you have to follow up?
Well, I just want to speak specifically to the concern about the general nature around the word community. I initially had region in there, but I recognize that probably wouldn't fly. But it is it is potentially, it is the Satlam community, which is broader than just Area E. Satlam goes into North Cowichan as well. And on top of that, as soon as the application is about expanding the racetrack up the hill, so the actual impact on the community is going to be potentially a lot broader, because the noise will travel, if it's up higher, it travels farther.
Director Kuhn and then Director Acton. You can turn your microphone off, Director Nicholson.
The reason we cannot provide any details and why we actually are not even entitled to get any details is because it's none of our business. It's North Cowichan's business. Now, all we can do, as far as I'm concerned, is we could offer comments. We could say maybe there's a concern about noise, if that's the primary reason. But even with that, I would be reluctant to get involved. But we cannot possibly suggest denial of an application because it's none of our business. We're trying to get involved in something that we have no say. And quite frankly, I don't want to have them have a say on what we're doing. If you get the outlying communities involved, where is it going to end up? We have electoral areas that are separate from the communities, and that's the way it should be. And we would be ending up making it a big melting pot, and we all decide on whatever little applications come, and we all make big decisions on it. It doesn't work. So, no, I'm not in favor of that.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a concern with putting a real statement on the application because it has some missing information, and there's some pros and cons to this application, and I don't want to go down that route. I would like to just state that we have, that the concerns of our Satlam residents of noise are considered when they are reviewing this application, something to that effect.
Okay, right now there's a motion on the floor. Doesn't exactly state that.
So if that motion is defeated, I would like to have some help constructing a motion. Next.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Director Morrison.
So I'm just asking for some help from staff on this, in that if it was the committee's desire to comment along the lines of what Director Acton was saying, and maybe some specificity to noise and impacts, is there the ability for us as a committee to direct staff to prepare something to bring forward to the board for approval at the board and then meet the deadlines that are requested by North Cowichan?
Ooh, Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might need some help on this. What is the board deadline for the agenda? Not today? Am I, Kathleen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Tippett. Yes, they are, but we could put a placeholder and just say to be distributed.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So, yes, I think staff could attempt to work up something that would be presented to the board in that case, and whether it would capture the range of thoughts that individual directors wish to present depends on, I guess, the resolution passed here. So if we can, the more detail that we can hear today at this meeting will certainly help us with that task.
Director Morrison.
Thank you. As a follow-up, then I'm hearing what Director Acton had shared and others around the table, and I sense that the committee wants to provide response and I would encourage defeat of this motion, and if it was defeated, I would introduce a subsequent motion that staff provide a response for consideration by the board, and that the area director, Director Nicholson, work with staff to develop that written response.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Director Morrison.
I don't have it written, my apologies, but I
Oh,
would.
geez, I wanted it written.
I would ask that staff develop a response in time for the next board, and that they work with Director Nicholson to adequately reflect the concerns of our community in that response.
Some clarification.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Director Morrison. I believe that I heard staff requesting that there be some detail provided at this point with regard to noise or environment or something.
Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Kathleen is correct. If at least some thematic areas could be described to give us a scope for what it is we're going to work with Director Nicholson on, noise, environmental, whatever, some sort of generic topics like that. Because as I think Director Nicholson said earlier, it could amount to several pages, but what we want to do is have a fairly succinct, if there is going to be a motion of the board, a fairly succinct one that's specific and yet doesn't go on too long.
Director Morrison.
Well, I actually have faith that Director Nicholson and staff can come up with something just along the lines of what Mr. Tippett has said. I think that we don't want to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at this, and that we have concerns about environment, we have concerns about noise, and that a succinct response could be crafted in time for the board meeting for us to consider it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R8 is a report from the Public Safety. Public Safety Division regarding a fire prevention, suppression, service, and emergency response agreement.
Okay, so this recommendation is here. Welcome.
Thank you. So before you, you see a report to obtain approval from the board to enter into an agreement with the Stunamus First Nations for fire prevention, suppression, and emergency response. So this service is provided by one of our fire departments, North Oyster, and the most recent agreement expired December 31st in 2018. So this agreement will be commencing January 1st of 2019 and expiring December 31st of 2023.
Looking to the director of the area. So moved. Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on now to R9. Director's report from Director Smith. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R9 is a report from Director Smith, Electoral Area G, Saltaire Gulf Islands, regarding the harmonized official community plan.
Director Smith.
Yes, I'd like to move the resolution, the recommended resolution that the Area G Saltaire Official Community Plan bylaw number 2500 be withdrawn from the harmonized official community plan and local plan process.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Director Smith.
In my report, I've been very clear in regards to our official community plan is 15 years old. It is in need of a full review. Many of the other OCPs have been reviewed in the last 5 years and are up to date. Ours is out of date. It doesn't reflect the community any longer, and it needs a full review. OCPs are started from the ground up. They're the community-driven. This process has not included directors in the process. It's not included the communities, and I think it's really important that that's where you start, when you start with moving items in and out of OCPs and creating a document. My electoral area director, my advisory planning commission has withdrawn from the process quite a while ago. They didn't feel that the chair had the ability or the responsibility to act and speak for the whole community. The process did not include members of the community. It only included the chair. This is a document that they were presented with for them to review, and they are not elected. We are elected to make decisions for our community. My OCP is now 23 pages long, and that's great. I think everybody's should be 23 pages or less. But when I look through it, all I can find is things that need to be redone, readdressed, relooked at. When you go through these documents, you come up with the same thing. There's many gaps, and I think it's very important that over time we've spent money on all the other electoral areas and their OCPs. So I think it's fair for Area G to ask to be removed at this time, withdraw, and be able to have a full review. And I know that there has been a cost involved in many of the others. I don't know how long. Area E has indicated they've been on it since 2015. So we need to be treated fairly and have an equal opportunity for the Area G residents of Saltaire to redo our OCP and look at it the same direction that all the other areas have had a direction of looking at from the community's level. So I ask that all the directors support me at this time in my ask for a withdrawal.
Director Acton.
Oh my God, this feels.
Director Morrison, you'll
Sorry,
be next.
I'm sorry. This is really a segregation that's like, I think we need to step back and kind of figure out how we're going to work together here and embrace some of the decisions that have been made in the past and that we've already spent money on. Perhaps this harmonization, we could have a small workshop and kind of review what's happened so that we can be brought up to speed as directors as we move forward. And so I get like that concept. I'd like to know if other directors feel that might be something worthwhile doing at this time, because we do, we've come a long way. We still have some ways to go. Pulling out certain areas because they feel so distinct to me is not actually worthwhile. I believe we've seen many examples before, like all our communities kind of want the same thing and we all want the same thing as well at this table. So when we stand up and say that we are different and that we need to be treated differently, and I don't think we're heading down the right route when we do that. So I think if we could have some kind of review of what's happened, and if other people could comment on that idea, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Director Morrison, Nicholson, Kuhn, and Smith, and Haim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think I'll pose a question through to staff in a moment here, but I share some of Director Acton's concerns in that there's been a substantial piece of work done on not only the Cowichan 2050 harmonized work. There's a certain amount of momentum, though a little bit stalled right now, but I'm really concerned that the segregating out of one area will cause, irreparable harm to any sort of forward motion that we will have from a group planning perspective. And I would much rather, as opposed to going back to a review of a system that the rest of the organization appears to be going away from, which is individual official
Director
community
Kuhn, I
plans.
can hear your phone.
That we perhaps look at something proactive like moving forward with harmonization and perhaps looking at the Area G local area plan as the first step in line for review and updating and modernizing as an olive branch to that community's lack of update and activity. So I don't know that I can, no, I know I can't support essentially putting all of the work that's being done in our community planning on hiatus while we go back to review an OCP when we can move forward in a proactive sense and put Area G at the front of the line for the local area plan work that obviously needs to be done.
Is that you have a staff question in that as well, or would you like to come back?
Is
to
that a practical way to move forward from staff's perspective?
And who from staff will answer? Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think Coralie could have answered this too, but I'll take a shot at it. It's true that the second phase of harmonization is modernization, and that's going to be, it sounds like a singular project, but it's not really. It's really a series of in some cases, micro projects, in some cases, somewhat larger projects, and certainly, once harmonization is completed, staff is going to approach this committee with sort of a priority list concerning who should be first, because we do have limited staff resources in terms of modernization. And so that discussion could certainly happen as part of that. And if it's determined that Saltaire or any other community has pressing planning needs or extremely out-of-date elements of their old OCP that needs modernizing, that could be dealt with pretty quickly in that process. And that process is slated to begin sometime early next year. I'm not sure exactly when, but I'm going to say the spring, something like that.
Thank you. Follow-up, Director Morrison? Director Nicholson? Director Kuhn?
Yeah, I understand that I was going to be next in line with a review because my OCP is over 10 years old now. And I forewent this because I know there was going to be over OCP's reviews now anyway because of the modernization. So to step back now and I could insist that my area be taken out of that and I would have a full review done. Well, I consider that counterproductive. We're now down this road and I think we should continue this road and there will be a review done on AIG's OCP. It won't be the full detailed review that she wishes to have now, but it'll be done in the time frame of the harmonized OCP. So I think we should leave it as it is, and because if we all start picking at it now and say, well, no, I want to have something special, we'll never get this done.
I have Director Smith and Director Haim. Director Nicholson to follow.
So I heard the words, we're not asking for something special, we're just we're asking to be treated equal. If other areas have had their OCPs full review and they've had that cost come forward, it's not about the cost, it's about equal treatment. If your OCP has had a 2-year process for reviewing it to get to this place, Area F, Area E, they've been included in the process, yet they haven't even finished their OCPs. They're still out in no man's land when we're sitting at this table. And so we they're relying on an old OCP. They're almost at the end. They could go for a public process to ensure that their OCP is being acted on right now. Instead, they've been stuck in this process that has slowly moved along, and we're still going to be slowly moving along, yet their OCPs are ready to be approved so that they could have those OCPs in place within the next short little while once they have public approval. So it's really important that even though they haven't finished their OCPs, they're close. They almost need to do that. And then when we have land use for Area E and Area F come forward, they would be judged on an updated OCP instead of the current old one that Director Nicholson referred to today, that it means that they're left back using an old OCP. One of the things I think is you can say, yes, well, we'll decide later if Area G is going to be first in the modernization. That's a maybe, maybe not. But I think it's important that we continue. I want to know exactly how many directors have read this binder to actually know what's going on in the harmonization. Have you read the words? Have you understood the words? Do you know the definitions? Are there definitions even there for some of those words? I think it's important that if you haven't even read this and you say to me, oh no, you have to get in on this, you got to do it, then how can you speak to something you haven't read or you haven't followed? And we've, as directors, have not been included in the meetings. We've not been included in the documents. So it's very hard for anyone sitting at this table, unless they've been reading these documents, following the process, attending the sessions that the APCs have been at, to actually say you cannot withdraw. Because how do you even know it even is what you are looking for? We're elected. Our APC chair is not the person who was elected to represent their community. And I'm saying that my community is not wanting to be included at this time and that we'd like to withdraw.
Director Haim?
Thank you. I'm kind of late to the party here on this harmonization aspect, so just if you be patient for a second. First off, I've just got a question for staff with regards to the process with the harmonization and then the creation of local area plans. Would the local area plan cover the whole electoral area or just select nodes? It makes reference to village areas in a CVRD publication.
Ms. Preen? Breen, not Preen, Breen, sorry.
Through the chair. The local area plan covers in the entire electoral area in most instances. The local area plan covers the historical information, the narrative about the community, and the designations as they relate to that community.
Okay, then just as a
Follow-up?
follow-up, then what's the reference to village areas in?
Village areas that exist within those local plans are retained within the local plan area.
Okay.
Is there a follow-up, Director
Thank you.
Haim?
Just a comment. With regards to Director Smith's motion, from my standpoint, it just feels like it's a little bit premature. I understand the reasoning and rationale behind it and the concern that relates to it. At this stage, I'm willing to kind of move along with the process. I have not read that document in terms of things, but it's still being crafted. Where I come from, being the regional district of Nanaimo, we were governed or guided by a regional growth strategy and then the OCP, which had within the OCP, they would have, if there was select village nodes, areas that they would have possibly some special comment on. I have not taken it to the APC. I'm not sure if it's gone to the APC in Area H over Mary's time. So I can't support the motion at this time. but it would be something possibly I would consider later after the draft document is completed and I see what's in it.
Ms. Breen.
Through the chair, with respect to Area H, staff had met with the area director and the APC on at least 4 occasions. We did go through that binder. The binder is distinct for every area, policy by policy with them. So that director is completely familiar and that APC is completely familiar. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Director Nicholson, Kuhn, and then Acton.
Thank you. I really sympathize with Director Smith's concerns because I'm basically in the same place. But I firmly believe that we need to all work together on making this harmonization and then the transition to modernization. It is the only way we're going to have a cohesive land use plan for the electoral areas that we can keep up to date and that staff can manage in a more timely way. We are just, and from my perspective, I mean, it is taking, our area is so out of date and it's taking so long to get things fixed that to me, in large part, it's a resourcing problem. And we got ourselves into a lot of difficulty in the land use department, as you know, on the capacity to deal with applications. We've thrown all the resources at the applications, and we have not for a long time been dealing with this broader planning, long-term planning kind of thing, and it's at our peril if we continue to go down that road. So I really think we need to think hard about getting some additional resources to get this done in a timely way. I'm absolutely amazed at how Ms. Breen has been able to, what she's been able to accomplish with the resources that she has in such a short time, and it's and we're just beginning to start to do the community work that we need to do. The community work is absolutely important. I mean, my community hasn't heard from me from us on the OCP front since we did the visioning back in what 2015 or whatever it was. So, you know, they're kind of wondering what's going on, and there are lots of issues, but, you know, we just have to keep moving forward. And, you know, taking a step back and breaking apart now would be just a waste of a whole big initiative that I think is really important. But we do think in this next budget cycle, we need to seriously think about the resourcing required to get this stuff done, because actually, the OCP means nothing unless you get it into the zoning bylaw. And, you know, our zoning bylaws are so out of whack.
Director Kuhn, Acton, and Morrison. Director Kuhn, you want off? Acton, Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this motion is defeated, I think I would have another motion to have a workshop to familiarize some of this committee. Almost half of the committee is new. I don't think at this point we are in the position where we should be proofreading the work that's been done at this point, but we should be perhaps brought up to speed on what's, you know, a better understanding of where we've come from and where we're going so that we can make good decisions going forward. And I would create a resolution to have a workshop session
I'll
to
turn
that
to Director
effect
Morrison,
afterwards.
and we'll see Director Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be
Or
supportive of that as well. And I just, for clarification purposes, you know, we understand that the land use services has been challenged with large numbers of applications. There's been movement made to get back to basics, to make some changes, and there was a conscious decision made with our professional staff as in regards to the area FOCP, and that, yes, I could have insisted that a public hearing process and adoption and everything that we proceed with it, that it be fast-tracked, but given the demands of the day on the department, a conscious decision was made to proceed with the harmonization and do that work, and we committed to doing that. I think that we should follow through, And I'd be fully supportive of bringing the details of the process to newer directors and to this committee so that we've got a full understanding of the path we're going down. So I
Okay.
would urge
So I would-
everyone to
I will
defeat this.
Call the question, actually, we'll read the resolution one more time, please, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that the Area G Saltaire Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 2500 be withdrawn from the harmonized official community plan and local plan process.
I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion has been defeated. And now we have another motion. Do you have it written? I don't think we need a motion. We don't? Just have direction. Oh, okay. Great. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Where am I now? Unfinished business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is none.
New business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is none.
Straight into question period. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to ask the chair a question? Must be a question, not statements of opinions. Questioners are not permitted to make a speech. I always like that one because we're really tired.
Phew, that was quite a meeting.
Yeah.
On the topic of the referral request or response from North Cowichan, will the committee and staff take into consideration the input received by Cowichan Tribes Elder Joe Thorne?
I'm sure they will.
Thank you. The local area plan boundaries, there was a lot of discussion on that. One of the issues that it brings up is, and there is a question, is what areas consider themselves, they may not be geographically within one area or within the boundaries, like in the case of Area B, residents that live in Cowichan Station, they feel more attuned to Area E, and the same with Satlam area. Is there any plans to talk to those people in those affected areas? Because I think a lot of people do associate themselves with one area and not the other. And then
I'm not sure if there'll be, there'll likely be conversations and communication, but I can't say who's going to be talking to who. You'd have to ask staff for that one.
And then it brings up the question, Madam Chair, is when we have these crossovers of boundaries, and we specifically have that in our area, where part of Area F is covered by the Area E OCP, but the Area F zoning, we saw that in an application today, that it was asked that the OCP not apply in that, but go strictly to the zoning bylaw. How are those going to be reconciled in this process?
I think that it'll be reconciled with the work that will be done. I mean, Area D, for example, the highway divides us. Valley View, people in Valley View think they belong to Cowichan Bay, but they actually belong to Cobble Hill. So we all have that. There was cookie cutters, and those are things we have to work through, and this is what we're trying to resolve.
Thank you. And the other issue is we're still hearing about how challenged land use services and the planning department is. Has there been any report to this committee on where those issues, are we making progress in that area?
You sit in all of our committees, so if there was a report, you would hear it, and we are moving forward. Yes, we are.
So is there
forward.
a report coming forward?
I don't believe we have a report to come forward with the planning.
No.
No.
Because we're still hearing resourcing is an issue,
Yeah,
not only for
it's been a very busy
development,
few years with developments, yes.
but the HOCP, is it not being constrained by a lack of resourcing, whether it's actual staff time or funding?
doing our best.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. So, oh, hello. Mr.
Good
Evans,
afternoon,
welcome.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, on the harmonization plan, we noticed that the APC has had many, many documents. The public is not even allowed to ask questions at the APC meetings. How about that we put, can the CBRD not put the documentation online so the public can have a look at it and maybe even have some input to it?
I'm not sure. We could ask staff about that. I'm not sure. There's a process that they're following, and I'm not sure if it's ready for public yet. But that is something you could ask. Ms. Breen is probably still here. Okay. Could
It's,
ask staff on that one.
it seems to me that there's a lot to it, and when you decide which way you're going, it would sure be nice to let the public know, because the public's talking, and yet
I'm absolutely sure that the documents, once everything will be publicized and online when the time comes.
but there, that looks like a lot of good reading there.
There's, gee, boy. Yes, well, that is, that's something that they're working through, so I'm not sure that, these are working documents. So I'm not sure that they'll be ready to go online yet, but I'm very sure that when everything is complete, they will be open and transparent.
Thank you very much,
You're
Madam
welcome.
Chair.
Motion to go into closed, been moved and seconded to go into closed. The motion, the meeting is closed to public in accordance with the Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsection is noted in accordance with each agenda item. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. If we can take 5 minutes, close the doors and